Here's something I wanted to read last week that I just uh, didn't. But to introduce ourselves, I feel like I should read what Whole Sound is, an initiative that Nick and I started. So Whole Sound is an artistic development and sustainability program that offers anti-oppressive education / training, community-centric curatorial specific resources, and workshops for the creative sector at large. WholeSound takes an anti-assimilation approach to curation, artistic development, mentorship, and entrepreneurship built around the identity of the human being with the creation of art as the focus. So I'd like to just offer that to give an understanding of what it is that Nick and I are doing with these workshops and everything to follow this. So thank you for that, and take it away, Nick.
Woo! This is awesome. I'm like looking at this video of my video screen with my mic in front of it. I feel like a video podcaster on YouTube, but it's like actually so nice that it's just my friends here instead. Um, and that's so cool. Lily, welcome. So nice to have you. I think everybody else was here at the last week, and so just to give you like the briefest update on what we were talking about, it was really we were just like talking about like rhythm and waves. And today we're just gonna like kind of pick up where we left off and like honestly kind of touch on everything again. So, um, yeah, I was also kind of wondering, like, for anybody who was here last week, like, does anybody have any questions or like, did anybody notice perhaps like waves around you in any kind of different way?
Glenn is chanting right now, so this house is feeling real nice.
House right now.
Hmm?
You're in Glenn's house in Advocate Harbor?
Yeah, we're hanging out.
Wow, that's very sweet.
Yeah, they said hi, but I've been listening to that like every day, and it's incredible.
Chanting.
And yeah, just when you asked that question, that's kind of what, yeah, him and Elizabeth in harmony, which is really cool. So
Hell yeah. So cool. Singing with other people is like, I mean, it's just, it's so cool that we can always do it as long as we're breathing. Like,
and
it's,
always have done it.
yeah, I know. It's like, uh, yeah, people feel like so sophisticated to keep inventing new internet devices, but like, still just can't, doesn't really shake a stick to like how actually, and I mean, this is, I don't even feel like this is off topic at all for what we're trying to talk about today, so I like this. Like, um, that there's actually something like really deeply sophisticated about melody, and we all like get that sense. And I also like the, like, I'm really blown away by the fact that everybody brought up this idea that it like arises, that there's like an arising quality to melody, that it's like there, it's like this sweet spot. I thought that was interesting. Like, um, and then, okay, yeah, so back, the whole question from the last one, class to me, like, and what connects these two ideas of rhythm and melody, or even like pitch, is like, just a question to me is like, what is a wave? Yeah, rise and fall.
Kurt, I said rise.
Totally. Yeah, and we've like, and you know, we kind of drew some of those waves out, so we see like this kind of thing, right? But then the other, okay, so like the thing I was thinking about the other day was I was looking at like the tiles on my floor. There's like a white tile and a black tile and a white tile and a black tile and a white tile, black tile. I'm like, is that a wave?
I would say so because it's a pattern, right, of repetition of some sort.
Yeah, and like, does it seem far-fetched when I'm saying that to anyone? Like I'm looking at the tiles on my floor and I see a wave? Like, yeah, it's not far-fetched. Like we get that. You're like, yeah, that's a wave. Like if I go and look at like, I don't know, like the bat, like if I go and look at, like even if I look at my door, it's got these like sections. It's got this repeating pattern. And I honestly could like, it's like if I'm looking at a wave from above, I can see that it has that, like, it comes in these bands. The bands are somewhat often equally spaced. We can kind of get the sense that they don't necessarily have to be. But also, yeah, I think you really said it, Kirsten, which is like anytime something repeats, we're kind of calling it a wave. And so the one, like some of the heady parts from last time when we were acting all like science-y, I'm like throwing these Latin words at us. Does anybody remember what those Latin words were? And they were like the two words that we use to describe a wave. They're English words too. I don't know why I'm being like this.
Frequency and amplitude.
Cow. What up? Yeah, right? And so, and the cool thing about that is if you have only those two pieces of information, you can describe the wave. And so, like, when I'm talking frequency and amplitude, and I'm talking about like the tiles on my kitchen floor, what am I talking about? So the frequency would be like how many times the tiles show up per meter, per kitchen space, you know? So that's like how frequently it goes from white to black to white to black. Makes sense to us. And then the amplitude, I don't know, what is that? The difference in color between white and black, right? So like, let's say they were like sort of grayish tiles, and one was like a darker gray and one was like a lighter gray, and it swapped from lighter gray to darker gray. We could see that as kind of being a wave of a shorter amplitude. And again, like, try to convince yourself when you look at repeating patterns, like if it repeats, it has a frequency. What's the frequency of these patterns that you see around you, you know? And then we're just kind of like using that idea to get more attuned to this idea of frequency. Because where does the word frequency come up for a lot of people? Is like usually related to pitch, right? Like you hear like a note and it's like, oh yeah, that pitch is at like 200 hertz. Ooh. And so does anybody remember what a hertz is from last time?
How many repetitions per second?
Yeah, exactly. Like cycles per second, clicks per second.
Ryan says something per second, yes.
Yeah, I got the chat open too, so you guys can type in the chat. I haven't like had to do what most teachers had to do, which is like teach over Zoom for the last like 2 years. But imagine what that's like, man. Because like if we were all chilling in a room, we'd be chilling. But like, much appreciation, you're all at home. It's like you know what it reminds me the most of? Like call-in radio. But I'm like looking at all the listeners at the same time or something. Yeah, and then so a hertz is just like how many times something happens per second. So we could describe like any kind of pattern that happens in time with hertz. And so do you remember the exercise that we kind of closed with? Was when we were clapping, right? All in like, and we were clapping to the metronome. Yeah. And then what did we do? So the metronome was like this, and I'd actually go like slow the metronome down to like that while we kept clapping like that, right? And so coming back to this like frequency thing that we're starting to talk about here, what am I doing? I'm lowering the frequency of my clapping, right? So if I'm clapping here, this is like that frequency of claps. Because frequency, again, how frequently does the clap happen? How many times am I clicking per second? Maybe that's once per second. So that would be like 1 hertz. And then every time I slow it down, I'm actually going lower in hertz, which means a number like between 1 and 0. So like 1 over 100 hertz, for example. or like 0.1 hertz, the slower I go. And the truth is that we understood from the exercise is that, so if I'm like clicking here, if I'm clicking here and this is a metronome, like this pulse can always get slower and slower. I can do it, I can increase the gap size here, which means that I see that frequency can always get lower. Do you see that? Like the distance between each clap, as the distance between the claps increases, the frequency of claps gets lower. And I could like, so if I clap like once a year, is that still have a frequency to it? Is that still a wave? Is that still a rhythm?
Yeah, it is.
Crazy. And I mean, like, these are literally the rhythms of the world around us. And so, and that's kind of what we were experiencing and like experimenting with in with that last exercise, is essentially setting up a rhythm that is at some frequency, and probably me clicking like this is like 120 hertz, which means like I'm clicking twice per second. No, sorry. It's not 120 hertz, but like it would be like 2 hertz. Like I'm clicking twice per second. And then 1. And so that's what happens as we go down, right? We start to increase the gap between it. So then what happens if we go up? So there I would be clicking at like this speed, 2 hertz. And then, and remember like what we said a hertz is again, right? Like it's how many times you clap per second. So like how many times could you clap in 1 second? One, two. Like honestly, like what do you think the fastest? How many, like what's the fastest you could clap per second? Try it. Everybody, you got to try it. Yeah, I feel like I was at like 3 tops too. I don't know, but I mean, you guys are really impressive at clapping. Um, okay, and so the lowest frequency that a human being can hear is called 20 hertz, right? So then what are we talking about? So what happens if so like the giveaway there is really that if I could clap 20 times per second, it would sound like this. Bo. It would actually like make a tone. And so like the biggest thing that I'm like trying to sew together here for everybody is that rhythm and pitch are the same thing. In reality, pitch, a tone, ooh, a sound like that is a very, very, very fast rhythm. In physics, in truth, in reality, that's what the microphone is picking up. Yeah, rhythm, pitch, tone, they are in fact all the same thing. And so like, yeah, like everybody here is like a, it's like, I think like, like does some sound, takes sound quite seriously. So it's something that like, I don't think that this is like so as shocking as it could be to others, because I know some people honestly have no concept of like, and then it's like, so for example, like A440 or a pitch like that, what it's actually saying is that it's 440 clicks in a second would make a tone that was like B, or like whatever that sound would be.
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, please ask some questions.
So I was just thinking about it over the last week. Like, if it's like clapping that's making the 440 sounds per second that form the rhythm, that form the pitch, then like, is it still gonna sound like ooh, like, or is it like, does it matter like what the small sound is, if you know what I mean? Like, does it just create a different overall sound, but at the same pitch? If like
You,
you're clapping 440 versus like snapping for 440.
the actual truth is, yeah, like they would all sound different, but you know how you would make the tone 440 would be going like this.
Really?
Yeah, because what's a speaker doing?
Just that.
It's going like this, like this.
Mhm.
And literally what I mean, like, you want to know honestly, like, can you guys see Ableton behind on the screen? You see this wave right here? You guys see that wave, right? Okay. You see how there's this middle line right through the middle? That middle line is the center point of the speaker, and this line is just tracing out the path of the speaker back and forth. That's all it's telling you. That's very literally what it's doing. It's applying this electrical signal to a speaker, and the speaker is going back and forth, following exactly this signal. That's what a speaker is doing. That's what sound is. This is how it works. Look, you're literally looking at the speaker sideways. Look, and fuck, you can see that, right? Like, here the speaker's making noise, boo, and then it goes silent. And honestly, why am I not playing this sound? Because it's going to embarrass me, because it's me I'm singing, I think. So that, what you see right there, that wave, that's just what the speaker's doing. Oh my god, please go away. That's awesome. I'm sorry, oh my god, you guys are listening to that. That's my voice just looped. Here it is. And then and we zoom in, this is what the speaker is doing. And I'm going to turn this loop off. And then watch what happens when it goes silent. Speaker stops. And so that wave motion is the cross section of the speaker. Does anybody else have any questions of any kind? Like, because otherwise I'm just going to go off in this, like, keep going, and, you know. It's hard. It's so hard to, like, it's so hard to gauge with everybody in their own house. It's all good, yeah? Just,
Yeah,
okay.
everyone says they're good, so
Yeah, I'll keep going. But also, too, just really, like, if you have questions, just spit them out. And, right, okay, and so remember how I said that, like, pitch and rhythm, they're the same thing? And that when we hear pitch, what we're hearing is actually just like a sound happening, a rhythm, a wave happening in air that's like so fast and has some kind of duration to it that we like hear it as a pitch. And so like you honestly get the sense of this too if you like spin a bike tire and then put like a stick in it. If anyone's ever tried to do something like that, it goes like grrrr, and you can hear the sound it makes. And actually, the faster you spin the tire, the higher the note will sound. And then the slower the tire goes, it'll go. And that's really what's happening too, right? It's clicking against that stick, and once the click starts to happen more than 20 times a second, your brain perceives that air packet as a single tone. And it's actually like telling us some really crazy shit about the architecture of our brain, which is that our brain is like really, really made to perceive patterns. and it doesn't require like so, because the whole European basis of measurement and everything like that is like, okay, well, we need to have a second, we need to have the meter, or else we're like all using different measurement systems, so we can't agree on anything, right? But then if we even come back to that clapping exercise we were doing, how the hell did we all clap together? You know? Or like, I mean, like in the example of the one that we did like in the last class, because it would have been like to the metronome. Like, sure, the metronome sets the tempo, but what if we were all sitting around a room together and clapping, and nobody sets? No, we never like sit around and agree like this is the exact amount of seconds between each clap, right? We just clap, and then we can actually all clap together. Which means that like somehow our internal mental architecture is able to take into consideration the exact amount of time between those claps. And if it was remembering the amount of time between those claps instead of this frequency piece of information, we simply wouldn't be able to clap together. There's just too much information in that problem. Like, it would be like throwing a dart and landing in the middle of the dartboard every time. Like, your brain isn't hardwired to do that. Isn't that interesting? And it's honestly like really quite sophisticated to clap all together. And then, so I asked this other question last time, I believe, which was like, what is air? And we just had to come to the realization that we only hear because we're in a fluid. And actually, like, my vocal cords right now are completely encased in the fluid called air. And my eardrums are completely encased in a fluid called air. And if there wasn't a fluid called air encasing my vocal cords in my ear, there's no way. If the same medium that I wouldn't be able to hear myself talk. Like, it's only through the vibration through. I mean, I would be able to like hear myself talk actually, because the vibration created here would vibrate through my body into my eardrums. But like, without fluid, without something for the sound wave to compress. And honestly, too, the other thing is when we look at this picture of this wave, it's actually so the microphone is doing the exact same thing, the exact opposite action of the speaker. It's like when the microphone experiences the wave, the microphone's diaphragm goes back and forth like this, right? And that's what actually etches this wave onto the tape. The microphone's diaphragm going back and forth like this. And what's doing that is actually when you speak, you're creating like a packet of air that's pushed together. And by creating a packet of air that's pushed together on these two sides, there's packets of air that have less air, right? And because they have less air, they suck air into them, and then they get pushed together, and then they all go like this and create a vibration, right? But when we think of the wave in air, this is how it moves, like this, always. Radiating outwards from us in all 360 directions every time you talk. So you are like a 3-dimensional pebble in a pool of fluid, literally, and every time you speak, it's radiating out these waves. And this diagram that you see here is actually just the cross section of one of those 3-dimensional waves. So this would be like me taking one of those waves and then cutting it in half and looking at it from the side, you know? And if I looked at it from on top, can you kind of see how it would look like a ripple in the ocean? Like, these are all the ripples on the top of it. And oh yeah, and so the craziest shit is happening actually when I'm going like this. Ooh, like what is, like, how, like, so if I just said that that's that note, for example, is like 440 hertz. That means for me to be able to create that note, something inside my body has to be vibrating 440 times per second. You remember how fast you could clap in a second? Like 3? 440? And that's not even like the highest end of the frequency spectrum that your voice can produce. So what the hell's going on there? What's clapping that fast? And how? And the answer too is it's just your vocal cords. Okay. So like what we come to terms with then too is that when I sing that pitch, like ooh, my my vocal cords are vibrating at 440 hertz per second or something like that, right? But then what's actually happening when two people sing a pitch together? Is that like, yeah, both of those voices are vibrating at the same frequency, like 400 times per second. So actually, like when I'm tuning my voice with someone else's voice by going like, ooh, we're doing the clapping exercise. We're doing the clapping exercise, but really fast. Like hundreds and hundreds of times a second, in fact.
It's amazing because it goes back to that thing you were talking about, how you don't even really need to agree upon an amount of time or amount of space between the claps. You just kind of know because you feel the rhythm. It's like, I guess the same would apply with mimicking pitches or singing together. It's like this, like we are built with this ability to agree with each other. You know, it's really cool.
And also again, because remember like from the yesterday, from the last class thing, like one of the things I was talking about at the beginning is like the reason that I want to do this class is because like what is reality anymore? Like if everybody can come out with their own truth, wait, can somebody just tell me quickly what's the most claps in a minute? I'm not gonna click it.
It's like 1,114 or something.
No, it's not. Wait,
It really is.
in a minute.
I don't believe that shit.
In a
It's
minute.
lies.
What's that in seconds? Divided by 60.
That's unreal. They're
What's the
lying.
number divided in 60?
I need a video. I need to see this.
What's the number divided by 60? Tell me.
Oh,
Like 18 and a half,
Okay, but still,
somewhere around that.
what's the lowest frequency I said human beings can hear?
20?
Yeah, 20 hertz.
20.
Yeah,
I'm gonna need a video of this.
I don't believe it, but
Yeah, and
Yeah, like I
you
need
get
to
the
see
video.
this.
I didn't know Guinness was into lying.
Yeah, really.
Guinness Book of World Lies.
Yeah,
No,
basically.
but this actually is crazy because this is exactly what we were just talking about too, right? Which is like, okay, everybody just says whatever the fuck they want now. Like it's a future where like nothing means.
You know what? I just need to say,
Yeah.
there's a way people clap where they do this. So like this is what he probably did. Like you clap here and then here. Yeah.
Show us. Sorry, Kip, for putting you on the spot like that, but like.
Oh, like this.
Yeah, but Kel can do the hell out of it, right?
Sorry?
Yeah, look at Kel do it.
Kelly,
And
you
you
should go for the record.
I should go
Yeah.
for the Guinness record.
I would say go for it.
No, fuck Guinness. Do it on
100%.
vinyl. Make music with that. Don't let Guinness have that. Guinness is boring. They lie. Guinness lies. It's not that cool. Make
We'll
music.
start our own. You'll have the first record in our book.
Yeah, honestly, like just figure out how to clap fast enough that you can make an audible tone, and then we'll just like break it. Like Guinness will be over at that point.
Yeah. Oh, Kelvin, you said what happens when you break the sound barrier?
I would try to answer that question right now, but the truth to the answer to that question is cool. I'll but just quick, oh yeah, just quickly back to what we were talking about before is the reason that we're trying to bring up like why I think it's interesting for us to talk about like what are these really fundamental elements of sound is because we live in this like post-truth world where anybody can tell you that anything is anything, right? And like even when people talk about accountability, which they're like always talking about, it's like, well, what the fuck does that really mean? You know? And like we can't sense it as much because we're not in the same room, but even when we did that metronome thing, right? Like the metronome's not changing. The metronome's not changing. It's just that it's hard to clap to it because our sense of perception of reality is not always there. And that's like what we're going through as people. That's like what we have to deal with is the fact that like we don't have very many robust ways to touch base with what's going on, to touch base with reality. And when we clap with that metronome and see that we're not on, and we know it's not the metronome that's changing, we just have to learn to acknowledge that like there are practices that bring us closer in tune to what is reality. And then even when we come back to this idea of what is agreement, you know, that's the other thing that I feel like I really want to talk about with this type of music work. It's like, okay, so let's say we all sat together in a room. I mean, it has a bit of imagination here, and did like a clapping exercise where nobody set the pace we were supposed to clap at. How would we, like, you know as well as I do what would happen is that sooner or later we'd all be like clapping in tandem. But how does that happen? Like nobody would have to sit down and be like, this is the time. But then again, like too, we already have enough experience with these kinds of things to know like it's just like reality. Like what would happen is that somebody would clap the loudest and everybody would follow the person that's clapping the loudest, right? Uh, and then so we see that there are like all different kinds of like dynamics that show up. I mean, like, and these accountability exercises are interesting because we can like just perceive the way in which we either try to like get on top of reality and control it or get like below reality and let it control us, you know? With the clapping, if we all clap together, I mean, I wish you feel it when it's a group of people clapping together. Because if the only goal is to clap together, it's not to be right or wrong, then it's no one's fault to speed up or slow down. It's the only way we can do it together is to actually care about being together and clapping. We have to want to do it as a group. Otherwise, it will never work. And so again, too, like when we're talking about the fundamentals of music, what is music? Where does it come from? What's the purpose of music? These are the oldest accountability systems in history. And we still have them and they're still in good shape. So that's great news, everybody. Because we don't have a lot of good shit like this. We don't have a lot of stuff that can help us tell like whether this is that or that is that, you know? And when you're off, you're off. And it doesn't matter how good you feel about yourself. It doesn't matter how cool at music you are, you know? And these things are really nice because they can like let you, without judgment, like touch base with what's going on. And then back to the kind of melody point of the whole thing is like, what's actually happening when you sing in tune with someone else? Is that your body, when you sing a note, it creates the shape so that only that one wave can come out, right? Wiggling like that. And that shape is perfectly tuned to that wave. For another person to sing that same wave, they have to make the same shape with their body. And then when the two shapes on the inside become the same, they resonate. Like one person singing louder, you'll feel it in the second person's body. If any of you have ever had the pleasure of being able to sing with another person. And again, too, this exercise is, if you have somebody to try this with, really, really the coolest shit ever. Sing a tone like, and just try to listen to the other persons and just tune those notes, see what happens. See what happens when you're slightly sharp. You can feel, like, not only can you feel it, you can feel it, right? And so, again, we're talking about the most ancient techniques for divining accountability, for knowing whether you're right or wrong. Like, you can tell. For that reason, you can tell it's a physical, real, you know? Like,
Can I ask a question?
yeah.
Just in terms of what you're saying, like singing with other people, I've done a lot of that. And I noticed that, like, when you're singing with someone, if you hit perfect unison or harmony, like my ears will do this, like what is that? Either that or I'll hear like a high pitch tone or something that just indicates that it's just spot on. But what is that? I don't know if anyone else has heard that or felt it when playing their instruments, but yeah, what is
It's
that?
actually, it's resonance.
Okay.
Yeah. And like what that means is that like there's a wave that's being created by those two waves interacting that resonates at that particular frequency, and then you hear it. And actually, you know what? Now would be a good time to get into this like whole little Ableton exercise here. I'll show you. So anyone who doesn't know, this is a program called Ableton, and I use it to do my things. And it's kind of like Microsoft Paint for sound. And what am I gonna do here? Okay, frequency. That's what we're talking about, right? And we're used to like sort of. Oh, you know, just before I keep racing, I just want to quickly check. Oh my god, this is amazing. I got everything on my list already. Okay. And okay, so I'm gonna put this thing here, Spectra. Okay. Bosh. And so what we're seeing is, this is just it's gonna take any sound that comes into it and just show us where the energy is concentrated into what frequencies. So for example, when I put my cursor here, it's like at 100 hertz roughly, right? And then if I put it here, it's at like 1,000 hertz, and here it's 10,000 hertz. And again, we remember what a hertz is. It's just like how many. So over here, we're talking 10,000 wiggles a second. And so your ear can perceive up to roughly 20,000 wiggles per second. So that's crazy, right? And okay, and yeah, so what I have here is a sine wave generator actually. And so let me just maybe before I even do that, let's just look at what it does. So I like I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna make operator the in and go like this. Right? So we see that whenever I hit my thing, I'm generating a different sound, right? And if I can zoom in a little bit more to this, which I can. Whoops. You see how that's like a low wiggle? I don't know if you can really see that's going too fast. Right? So that's like a low frequency wave. And then I could go up frequency. That's like a higher frequency wave. So we see that there's more wiggles per second, right? Higher frequency. Lower frequency, lower. Higher, higher. Oh god, that was loud. I'm sorry. Okay, and even now, so one cool thing about this is we can just go back and take a peek at that. So here are our little wave packets, right? And then like look at what they look like. They're perfect sine waves, okay? And so this is because I'm using a computer and it's generating a perfect wave. So the frequency is how frequently this happens, and the amplitude is how big the wave is. And these waves are actually really beautiful to look at this speed. So I'll let you see this for a quick sec. Wow. And that's just what the speaker cone is doing, vibrating back and forth like that. Wow. That actual white dot right there is exactly what the speaker is doing. See it go up and back and forth? Wow. Okay, and so the other cool thing about these notes is that, okay, so I'm gonna go back. We'll listen to these notes run through again, but now we're gonna look at them on the frequency spectrum. Oh, fuck. Whoa. And so what happened there, right? So we heard a note and it was like boo. And so what this is showing you is that almost all of the energy in that note is actually concentrated right here around 100 hertz. And actually, if I was to zoom in with my thing again, you see how it says 100 hertz is G? So I was hitting the note G, and then that's what it looks like. So this is called the frequency spectrum, right? So it's showing you that that wave, almost all of the information in that wave is concentrated at 100 hertz. So that's how we interpret these frequency spectra. And if I keep, oh god, put my thing back. And so now if I go and listen to these, so that note was a C, right? And then look, that note's an A. And we see with every different note, the peak where all that energy is stored moves, right? And so that's what we actually call the fundamental of a pitch, which is just what the pitch is, in a sense, to us. Right? So there's another G. And look, there's a G an octave up, and you'll notice it's at roughly 200 hertz. Another octave up, 400 hertz. 200, 100. 200? That one is 800. So actually, too, what we noticed right there is where I had a G and my note G was like moving up through these different octaves, that every time a pitch went up an octave, it doubled. And so every time it goes down by half, or every time it goes down an octave, the pitch slows half in speed, right? Do you guys remember the clapping exercise that we were doing? And we just half it. Clap, 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 half it again, half it again. That is what the octave is. So again, just connecting this concept of the octave back to these clapping exercises, it's extremely intuitive. Like, this is something we can work with. You don't need anything other than your body to generate these pitches, right? But now we're going to look at something. Does anybody have any questions about this? About this like diagram that like shows where the energy is concentrated? The frequency diagrams? Do these kind of make sense? Yeah, sick.
Wait, I have a question.
Love question.
Just tell me what the X and Y are again, like on the how I read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So the Y is power,
Okay.
right? It shows you just how much energy is there. And so you notice that they're all negative numbers.
Mm.
And it's actually because this is 10 to the power of that. So 10 to the power of negative 12, what that would look like is 0.0 with 12 zeros and then a 1. So it just is trying to say it's a very, very small amount of energy. Very, very small amount of energy. Because in waves, if in acoustic waves, if there was more energy, they'd be fucking knocking shit off the desk and stuff. That's not what's happening,
So true.
Mhm.
right? It's actually
Oh, we're unmuted.
it is crazy how little energy there is in an acoustic wave and how far it can propagate information like that. Like it really is. And then so that's what's on the y-axis is energy, and what's on the x-axis is frequency. And we see this at the top here. So this is like 100 hertz. That's 1,000 hertz. Over here would be like 70 hertz, I guess. 60 hertz, 70, 80, 90. And this line here actually tells you which one we're at. And this type of an x-axis, in case anybody's curious, is called a logarithmic axis. And we don't even have to remember that. I'm just for clarity gonna say it. But just that what it's trying to say is that the lower that you go here, there's just so much more energy concentrated in the low frequencies that unless they were to push these together, you would never even see 10K. Even though the information at 10K is important, so they squish the graph in like that. That's all you need to know. Okay, so that was what it looked like when I used my computer generated tone, right? And cool, we're all cool with that. But now what I want to know is like, why do people's voices sound different? Does anyone know the answer to that question?
I mean, I don't really know the answer, but intuitively, I would say um, vocal cords like thickness, um, stretching, vibration. Um, yeah, that's all I think.
Yeah, I mean, and it really is just basically the truth is just like everyone's bodies are different. So everyone's
Yeah, like you can imagine with like a gourd or something, right? Like the shape being different makes a different sound. So I guess like because my head is a different shape,
Yeah.
maybe
I cannot get over that you said gourd.
a gourd, like one of those big gourd
I
things.
know
That,
exactly what you mean.
yeah.
Like in Canada, like if you say gourd, people like think that you're talking about like their uncle or something. Like they
Oh,
don't, it's like not a European word. Like it is, but they say bucket.
so Kurt says, Google the definition relating to or expressed in terms of logarithms, scale constructed so that successive points along an axis or graduations which are an equal distance apart represent values which are in an equal ratio of a curve forming a straight line when plotted on a logarithmic scale. It's a lot of words. It's a mouthful of stuff.
You,
But I can do
wasn't it?
it.
I said like it just is squished. It's just all squished, you know? Squished.
True.
Math speak, man. It's just like that shit. They don't want you to know. I'll tell
Stresses
you.
me out, honestly.
Okay, so that again is a weird tone there. But whoops, whoops, whoops. I'm gonna I'm gonna turn this violin back on. And just for kicks, I'm gonna go like this. Wow, beautiful. Just angelic violin sound, right? That is for sure a violin.
Kelvin asked a question in the chat.
Oh, I can't see the chat right now, so yeah, tell me.
Okay, so they say, do each of our voices have a bunch of different frequencies that make up the whole voice?
if you're gonna ask that like a question when you fully know the answer by how you, I mean, that is
No,
generally,
I would have inflected it more like, is that why all our voices sound differently?
yeah, like that's that is. What is pitch, Alex? Okay, well, yeah, and look at this. That's a single note on the violin, everybody. So WTF is going on? You remember what the single note on the synthesizer looked like? It was just one peak, right? And this note's a B, and it is. But what the fuck is this? What is this porcupine shit here? Huh? And on top of that, okay, so like let's go back. You remember how when we did this with the computer generated thing, all the waves, they were perfect looking waves. Look at that. Just perfect. Looks like it was made by a goddamn computer. Like these are the waves too that I said that we get when we trace out a circle, right? These are those exact kinds of waves when you trace out a circle. And what do they sound like? Really, that's what the sine wave sounds like. So cool. So that's just what a sine wave sounds like. But now if I play a violin, what's that going to look like? Okay, so there's my violin note. There's another violin note. Another violin note. I'm just going higher so we can see the higher frequencies. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at these violin notes that we just played. Give a little juice here. Yeah, look at that wave. Does that look like that perfect little sine wave we saw? Hello. But that wave right there that we're looking at is the sound of the violin. There it goes. And that's one note, but you can kind of see that it seems like it's made up of a bunch of different waves. And then especially like when I go over to this view, oh fuck. You can see right there, like there's a fundamental, and then everywhere that you have a peak, in just this one note, there's actually all these distinct waves in there. What the heck?
Would it be like different areas where there's also energy being pushed?
Yeah. Well, no, they're different frequencies where the energy gathers,
Right. Okay.
right? Because remember how we're saying that when we're looking at a wave in the air, it's just all it's doing is it's capturing the vibration in the air, and then the actual vibration, like it's crazy too to consider that the packet of air that is hitting your ear when it comes out of a violin is a combination of each one of those waves that peaks out in this thing. So where do each one of those waves come from? From the shape of the violin. Just because of how it's shaped, it's creating these other little things out, these other waves. And what are these waves called in music? They're called harmonics. And so what a harmonic is it's just like if you had a computer generated sound, it doesn't have harmonics. I mean, not like computer generated sounds now can, but that one computer generated like sine wave note that we generated, no harmonics. So what does it sound like? An indistinct kind of note, like boing, a beep, a bloop. But this, you can tell it sounds like a violin, right? Because of the combination of these harmonics that are in there. And I'm actually going to stop that right there for 1 second so we can see how the harmonics, how they got traced out there, right? Because I just want to really quickly look at this one aspect of this vibrating note that we were looking at here.
Okay, great, cool.
So I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna be like, hey, you. So I'm gonna loop a section of this note here. Right? Okay. So this is just one note. One note coming out of the violin naturally as hell. This is just the violin as it is. Okay? The note that we see in the middle here is B. Right? Can you guys can see that in the corner right here? It's saying what the note is. So this one's B. And the B is 250 hertz. And then, okay, so then what would the next harmonic be? So that's 250 hertz. The next harmonic is here at 500 hertz, which means that the first harmonic is always exactly double the frequency of the first wave. And what do you get when you double a wave? Exactly an octave. Look at that, it's B. B3, right there. So anytime you get a violin note, it's also giving you the octave. Crazy, eh? And then guess what? It's giving you an F sharp. So that's not a B. That's a different friggin' note. So every time you hear a note, you're actually hearing a whole ton of different notes. WTF. And okay, so that's F sharp, and that is called the fifth. Like, as we sort of know in music, it's called the fifth. We'll talk about this shit later. You know, and then what happens when we go up to the next one? A B again. So another octave. What happens when we go up again to the next? A D sharp. That is the major third. What happens when we go up again? An F sharp. So the fifth again. Go up again. We get an A. What is the A? The minor seventh. And then actually too, as we keep going up, another B, a C sharp, that's the second, a D sharp, that's the third, an F, that's the tritone. And actually, like, as we go through here, there's a G, A sharp, B. Actually, you'll actually find that in the harmonics is every single one of the different notes in the scale. And that's actually where the scales come from. It's from a single note. And actually all of the rules of melody and harmony come from one single note.
That's amazing. So I kind of have a question.
Mhm.
So this sequence of intervals, does it present itself the same way in every single note? Like one and then an octave and then a third, I think, or sorry, a fifth and a third in everything.
In every note on every instrument. And again, just like to really quickly drive this home so quickly. So there we see the harmonics. And the harmonic. Sorry about this. So here we see the harmonics in what I'm singing. I'm going to drag this over here. So it's just on one of my notes. That note's D. That note's D. That note's A. That note's a D. That note's F sharp. That note's A. That note's C, the minor seventh. We're back to D. That's just called the harmonic series. And it is a part of nature.
Nick,
What's up?
why doesn't a sine wave have partials? Like, why doesn't it have harmonic resonance like a sawtooth wave, like every other instrument?
Well, I mean, it really is like it's just like, so the difference between when you're looking at a wave in this view, oh god, in this view here versus looking at it on that spectrum is just how it looks. Because it's just a like, this wave right here, for example, is comprised of tons of different frequencies, right? You can't tell that by looking at that. I mean, and you want to know what's fucked is you actually kind of can, because let's watch something. If I zoom into this wave, you can see the low frequency pattern. Look at that. You see what my cursor is doing? So that's the low frequency wave, right? And then a higher frequency wave that's clearly imposed on top looks like that, right? Wiggling up and down. So actually, like, this wave is just is truly a combination of a packet of sine waves. And the craziest, I mean, like, really the part of it that's honestly, I feel like, and then so too, so like you can see that these waves coming out of my violin sample, they look like they're wiggling, right? They're like all looking wild. This is probably my voice going, oh. And look at how fucking close I got to singing a sine wave there. Not there. But even still, it's kind of like the lower frequency part of it. Oh, fuck. I really wanted to show you guys this. Okay, so remember, actually, Jared, this comes back to that same question about the sine wave, god dang. Okay, watch this. Let's pick a note of me singing. What's the prettiest? Like that one? I like that one. It's like a little note. Let's make it a little longer. Oh, right. Okay, I was like, why did I do this? Okay, so the interesting thing is, we'll look at this spectrum again. Okay, so we see that there's like a low frequency part and a high frequency part to this sound, right? Oh my god, this is annoying. Oh god, I'm so sorry. I can't do that. I keep hearing myself do that. That's crazy torture. But when that note was going, we saw, right, there's like a low frequency part to the wave and then a high frequency part to the wave. And so now here's the actual cool thing about any sound. The lower frequency part of the sound is the body of the sound. It's what pushes air. It's where all of the energy. Oh, you know what I just realized is, let me go back to that note. So you know how we're looking at this note logarithmically on the spectrum right now? This is the logarithmic. So now I'm going to make it linear just so we can see how the energy in this sound is actually distributed. That's linear, right? So what we can see is like, here's like 10 hertz, and then here's 5,000 hertz. And so what we can see is, like, this is minus 102 on a logarithm, and this is the decibel scale, right? So every single time you go down a number here, you go down a power of 10. So we can see that, like, like up to here, up to 20k, there's all kinds of wiggling information, all kinds. But honestly, this information is useless to me because look at where all the energy is trapped. And I'm going to turn auto off and actually just control the range here. So if I'm looking from 0 to minus 30, which is 30 zeros in front of the 1 is how little energy there is. Almost all of that sound is concentrated in the lower end. And then as I go down on this, oops. So minus 30. And then I see, like, as I go down to minus 70, still almost all the energy is underneath 10K, right? And so this part of the wave here is where the big energy, the body of the wave is. This part of it here is where you start to get the distinction. And this part of the wave here, where there's this amount of energy, that is the characteristic of the sound. So the high frequencies are like imposed on top. They're like tiny little waves that add like a frill to the low frequency, which is that low passing wave. All of those waves tell you what the note is. And also watch this. So I'm going to put a filter on this, and the filter is going to cut out either the high or the low frequency. So first I'll cut out the high. Just give me a second. I'm going to put a utility on this so we can hear this. And so, Jer, remember that question that you asked about like why is a tone not like a sine wave? Well, watch what happens if I actually cut all... If I cut all the harmonics out with this filter, I'm pretty much hearing a sine wave.
Starts to look like one too.
That's, yeah, totally. If I outputted this, it would look quite a bit like one. But as you can see, still, like, I couldn't with my filter. Even look what I'm doing with my filter. Like, still, look, there's energy. There's so much energy in this D sharp harmonic right there. And there's so much energy in that harmonic. Actually, let's move the bottom up. Wow, look, there. At this, we can really see that it's quite like a sine wave, right? When I low pass it. And so what we're saying is the energy in the wave is like this sine wave, this low frequency sine wave. Anytime I talk, this is me singing, right? It has a sine wave in the bottom of it like that. And now watch what happens. I'm going to go in a band pass formation. Watch what happens as I go back. So this is the low harmonics. First octave. And now can you kind of hear that it's a different note? Especially as I get higher up. You can hear different notes in that one note up here. I'm sorry, does that hurt? I'm peaking this frequency. I like doing this. Might hurt your head. And so what's also really, really cool is if I high pass this, like, so now I'm only going to give you some of this energy at the tippity top, right? Look at that. There's just a very little bit of energy that I'm giving you at like 10K. Here, I'll even go less. You can hear what note that is. There's no fundamental in there. There's no sine wave in there. That is a little bit of scattered frequency coming at you above 10 kilohertz. And I can tell that it's like a low note somebody's singing. How weird is that? So actually what we're discovering too about sound is that like in these high frequencies above 10K is the information that your ear uses to differentiate all these sounds. It's all this information just right up in the tippity top right here. And this is also the reason why too, like when people are talking about like preserving your hearing, like, yeah, you only lose your hearing in the top in the top thousands of in the top tens of kilohertz. But, for example, watch this. So I'll go back to this filter, and we can hear that sounds like just power, right? And as I open this filter up, it'll start sounding a little less like, see, it still sounds like a synth, right? Not like my voice. But as I open this up, it's going to sound a bit more like my voice. like there-ish is where it first starts to sound like a voice for me. And I'm at 1.78 kilohertz. So like almost 2000 hertz at that point. But and then so now I'm open to like around 5 kilohertz. And it sounds like any male voice, right? Or like any like low voice doing this, making this kind of a pitch. But watch what happens as I add the top 10K. And now I don't know if you can really totally tell from Zoom audio how you're getting it, but it's starting to sound like my voice. And actually the thing that differentiates my voice from somebody else's voice is mostly up right here in this frequency range, in this top 10K.
I have a question.
Yeah?
I'm just wondering, back to Kelvin's question earlier about like, does it make a difference what the sound is, in terms of like how much something repeats to make a certain pitch or whatever, if I'm wording your question properly. So would this be the difference? Like, say for instance, my clap, if we looked at it closely, would it have all of these different harmonics as well? Like that would specify what the pitch would be if you like times it by a gazillion. Does that make sense?
I bet, I'm almost certain that if I clap and record it. Give me one sec.
Because I guess like even when we hear a clap, we know it's a clap, right? So there has to be a reason why we know.
Wait, I'm gonna try this one more time. Made those too hot. Okay, this is a curious one. Wow. Wow.
It's almost like no matter how you clap, there's still similarities in each one towards the end. Yep.
When we look at this, what we notice is it's actually full of harmonics, right? Kind of like the other sounds. Like there's all these harmonics here that we're seeing these little peaks of. But instead of the harmonics being spread out in a way that makes a ton of sense, we actually notice that they're all squished together. It kind of seems to be all kinds of different notes, and they're roughly all at the same height. And because none of these harmonics peak out, we can't tell what pitch this is. And that's what it is. It sounds like a fucking clap. It doesn't seem to really have a pitch, does it? But it's actually white noise. It's just a sound that's comprised of all the pitches. And I can actually prove it to you by going like this. Oops. And now I'm just tuning the claps with this filter. And that's what I was just trying to show us with the filter too, was in this low end here, it's just power. Oh, that sounds so good. Oh, oh, that's when I clap. So that's like where the energy in the clap is. And as I go up still, right? Like it's missing the characteristic sound. Like that could be somebody knocking on wood. Still, what could be anything. Once I start to get up to 2K again, I'm like, shit, that's a clap. And then again, if I do it from the other direction, it's a horrible sound. That sounds terrible. I've never tried to high pass a clap before. Listen to that. A clap with no energy and just the sound of, yeah, this is an awful sound. This is a disappointing sound. You get some of that energy back in there, it really feels like a clap. But even up here, you can tell that's a clap. It's just like the most
It's like really teeny tiny hands.
Squirrels clap.
It's like babies clapping.
Oh no, Arjun is missing this week, but they have these really tiny hands, like these little tools.
So that's a cool little exercise, okay? Right there.
Did we end up covering that sound barrier thing? I was just curious, like, cause you like break through the point, you're going so fast, and then boom, speed of sound, you're past it, and then there's a big ass boom.
Okay, well, so remember how we said, like, okay, so like, you know how we're looking at those waves? Every single one of those waves is a ripple that is moving out from away from us, right? The speed at which those ripples are moving away from us are determined by the properties of the gas. And what properties? The elasticity of the gas. And so it turns out that in sound, at like if you don't compress it, or in air, sound always moves at the same speed, which is roughly 343 meters per second. If you heat up or cool down the air, it will move slightly faster or slower. Okay, so if that's what's happening, right? It's like when I move right now, there's like waves rippling away from me. Or when I talk, there's like waves rippling away from me, moving at the speed of sound. And what those waves are, what they literally are, is stress being transferred through that medium as fast as that material can possibly move stress from one molecule to the other. It is how stress propagates in nature. So like when I hit this, like when I hit the bench, right? It's creating like a stress at the point of contact that's radiating away from that point of contact constantly. And that's like what we hear when we're hearing sound. If you go faster than the speed to which an object can shear itself, faster than the rate to which it can actually possibly pass energy from one molecule to the other, you have to tear it. Yeah.
So you're literally breaking through air?
What you're doing is you're adding a vacuum with sound. Like, if you move faster than the speed of sound, you will leave a pocket behind you that is a vacuum that is like that has to be filled in, right? And so again, like this concept of breaking the speed of sound is something that human beings did not experience until the technological age, unless our ancestors did it in ways that we don't understand. I'm certainly, but like, without a jet, you're not going faster than the speed of sound.
What about the crack of a whip? Or
Oh
like
yeah,
snap
totally.
of a
No,
towel?
actually, no, Jer,
Is that how they did it?
you're fucking genius, bro. That's the answer, actually. But that is actually what's happening. Is that when you whip a whip, you're actually pushing air away from the tip of that whip faster than 343 meters per second. It's creating a vacuum, and then the air has to suck back to fill in that vacuum, and then it creates a ka 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 ka, which is a sonic boom. Boom. That's what happens at the edge of a whip.
That's so cool.
That's insane. So the sound of the whip isn't the actual whip hitting the thing?
No, it's actually no, it's not. Jer's right. It's from creating a pressure area.
That's one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, but honestly, the more that I really think about it, like, and honestly, like, this is the shit right here. What is a clap? What are you hearing when you hear a clap?
Impact? Is that different from a sonic boom?
Kurt says air between hands pushed out.
Whoop.
For sure. It's actually and the answer is that it's a combination of both things. And you want to know what I learned about in acoustics? Like literally what I studied in grad school is that all of those peaks tell you a different thing about the physics of the problem. It's just like how all of those peaks relate to the shape of the body and the sound of notes. And like the differently shaped your body is, the different mixture to which you'll have those different harmonics in the pitch you sing. So like, and what we literally did in acoustics in grad school for me was you would look at sounds, you'd find their harmonics, and you would associate their harmonics with different parts of the physical problem. So if I was to, again, take that clap sound that I recorded, I could probably associate a bunch of those peaks with the sound of, and again, too, like, right? Like, what is a sound? So then what is the sound of a clap? What you're hearing is just a disturbance in the air that you're in. And that disturbance is created by energy that just has nowhere else to go. So it radiates out in the form of pressure waves, constantly being attenuated by friction in the air, which is the only thing that makes them get quieter. Which is why if you stand outside in a field and you clap, you'll hear that clap for like far, far, far away.
Wow.
Yeah.
This has been amazing and very educational and sparked a lot of questions for me. So thank you.